First thing we need to do is remove the body pins. These can just be pushed from one side and they'll come out. They are handed, so it is a good idea just to remember where they went when you come to put it back together. If I just zoom in, I'll try and show you on. So I'd always recommend your thumb on one side, finger on the other, just push so that it comes off and then lift the pin away. The body then should just lift off its mountings and the aerial will then come through the body. Now this kit's got one of our LED sets in, so that just needs unplugging. First we need to remove the rear pod, which is actually very straightforward. I'd always recommend disconnecting the motor at this point. You'll see there are just some small connectors. They should just pull apart like that. Now we need to just slacken off the shock. I just take a couple of turns off the front screw and then just remove completely. You'll find when you remove that there will be an O-ring on the screw, and underneath the shock you'll find there'll be a small plastic insert. So just put those to one side. Remove your aerial tube because you don't want to bend or damage it. If we just put the car on its side now, you can see on the bottom that there are two screws here, and depending on the length of your car they will be in any of these series of holes. This is obviously quite a long wheelbase, they're in the rear ones. This is the FXX Ferrari. What we need to do is slacken those screws off. There are two of them. With those removed, that pod will just come away from the main chassis. So now you can pop the chassis to one side, and then we're left with our rear pod to then disassemble. First thing to do, remove the driving wheels. If you hold both the tyres, pop the spanner that comes with the kit and turn anti-clockwise, so to the left, you'll find the nut will stay inside the spanner. Turn the unit round, again hold both tyres and remove the nut. They can now go to one side. These wheels will then pull off. One side on the near side you'll find there'll be a small end cap, and the other side there won't. Now we need to disassemble this pod to access the motor. So the first thing we need to do is remove the differential cover. Just stand the motor up on its side. You'll find there's two small screws. Just turn those and again pop those to one side. This cover, just ease it off the back end, that'll lift free. You then need to just rotate gear differential until the grub screw on the pinion gear on the motor can be seen. And with a 1.5mm X wrench, just undo that to the left anti-clockwise and that'll come free. The gear diff will then just lift off, put to one side. We now need to slacken off these three screws here, just slightly smaller than most. And now on both sides we just need to remove these two screws. They're opposite each other. and then the two on the side without the gear diff. This pod will now pull off, and that will come out complete. Just move this away. Now you'll find this top plate will just lift away. Just check this orientation, because when we put it back we'll want this little notch for the motor wires to go through. Now to remove the motor, you'll see there are two screws here. You just need to slacken off. Don't need to come out completely and the motor will come free. And the motor comes away from the mounting. So the tricky bit is now trying to get these very small pins, I can see those, out from the drive shaft to replace the two bushes that are in here. Now to do this, I would recommend removing this casing. Just got three small screws and actually taking this back portion out. So if we do that, that'll then come away. Those you can then push to one side to access this pin. You'll only need to remove one of them to get these bushes out, and you can see one of these plastic bushes has actually come free. We just clear a bit of space. What we'll need is a small block of wood, a hammer, and I've got a 1.5mm old drill bit that we use as a punch. So pop it on the edge of the wood. You just need to tap the pin through so that it's all coming out one side. You can then line up the drill bit. So the pin's dropped out. You'll find that both of these plates, and just keep their orientation the same, so it's very easy to get these around the wrong way. So just pull them off and lay them down. So that's what we're now left with. Just push through and come out of both those plates. On a pack of bearings, you'll see that there are two bearings that are larger than the others, and they simply drop in from one side. You'll see there's a recess on the back, so just push them in, and now you can just thread the drive shaft back through the bearing, and you'll already feel that they're much more secure and smoother. Similarly, put the second one on, put those down to one end. What we need to do is bring our little piece of wood back, a small pin, what you're aiming for is to get equal amounts of pin through both sides of the shaft. To reassemble the motor housing then, first of all we need the plate that's got warning hot on, and that logo goes to the bottom. And we're just going to mount it on one side, and you'll find that on the plate there are some small locating pins which will really help you put it back together. So just line those up and you'll see that the holes line up. You've got two of your screws. Now to put these back in, best thing to do is just run them backwards and you'll feel them drop into the threads that were cut before, and then you just start tightening those up. If you don't do that, you run the risk of stripping the thread that was already cut into plastic the first time it was assembled. And remember, don't over tighten these, they just need to be tight enough to bite, and we're only screwing into plastic and it'll be very easy to strip them. At this point we just need to mount the plate back on this side. I find this easy. So this plate, you'll see there is also a very small locating pin here. Will help you get them in the right place. Now with the 3 very small screws, just mount that. And again, you can use the same principle of turning back to find the thread and then winding it on. You'll find it'll lend itself to be disassembled and reassembled more times if you follow this procedure. Okay, now we're ready to install the motor. So on the motor, just note that one of the wires, the black wire, is always longer, and then that side of the motor needs to point downwards when we fit it. And on the front you'll see there are 2 holes opposite each other, and that's where we're going to be mounting in here. So with black wire down, place the motor through onto its plate, and then we're just going to try and locate this bottom screw into one of those holes. So we wind it on, you'll just feel it starts to bite. Just get a couple of turns on and then look down. You just then want to locate the top one, and again get a few turns on. You don't want to over tighten these, you just want it to be tight enough to hold the motor sort of square when we set the gear mesh in a minute. Okay, we can continue to reassemble. What we need to do is put this pod back on the bottom, and again there are some holes for pins to line up. Get those in place. The important bit is this top plate. You want to make sure that the wires come through this hole and they're not pinched at all. So drop the pins in this side. Line it up. Check that both the wires are through. Once you're happy, you can hold that and just see that everything lines up. We just want to pop 1 screw in each of the sides, just to make sure that it's all held in place. At this point, that should all then stay together, and you can go through and add the remainder of the screws, 3 into the bottom, which were the smaller ones if you remember, we've got here, and then the screws into the side. So if I go ahead and do that off camera and come back,